You may or may not understand that the Fed has already pivoted. A lot of you think a pivot is a cut. No, folks, a pivot is just a reorientation on what is most important. We're going to have this conversation with Taylor from Life Goal Investments. All righty, buddy. I think the Fed has pivoted. What say you?
Educate me, because I'm not sure where you're coming from here.
All right. So I believe the Fed, for the better part of a year, probably 18 months, has moved stable prices to being the only thing that they were looking at, right? There was a time when inflation printed 9.1. And it's been inflation, 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 inflation for whatever it's been, 15 months. I believe in the last meeting, Jerome Powell slipped a line in that a lot of people missed that basically said, nope, it's now inflation, stable prices, and the job market. I think he's hinting that he's starting to watch the job market because he sees some underlying structural stuff that's clearly concerning him to make that drastic a pivot. Not a lot of people caught it, but yeah, I think Jerome Powell and the Fed has pivoted to stable prices and full employment. I think that happened.
Interesting. Yeah. So I wouldn't have called it a pivot per se like you did, but I caught that line. And that was the most important line in the last meeting to me when he brought up the fact of if we have a significant weakening of the labor market. I think we're almost verbatim his words. And that was the first time he's brought that up because the risk has always been the labor market's too tight. And now that's a total coin flip. And I think literally the tightness of the labor market being too tight were commented on in his prior meeting. So now we're going from too tight to literally a 180. The risk is a weakening of this labor market. But yeah, I didn't necessarily perceive that as a pivot, but when you say it aloud, I'm on board with your comment there.
Yeah, again, and what has happened since, because that happened on Wednesday, we got a weak employment number on Friday, below expectations. We saw the unemployment rate tick up from 3.8 to 3.9, kind of breaking trend. So I think Powell and the team obviously had an insight to that number. And then the weekly claims last week also ticked up, right? And we think it was like 325 or something where, that was like the highest number since August.
Yep.
And yeah, I think Powell was like, no, man, I got to watch both these things. His eye, he's not single focused anymore.
Yeah. And I think that there is, whether they would never say this, by the way, but I think there is a line in the sand at 4%, not only for the Fed, but also for the broader market. Anytime you hit a whole round number, so 4% unemployment, you go 3.8, 3.9, okay, no big deal. 4%, it's like, okay, unemployment's back awake now, right? We've hit another round number, and the market just has these natural tendencies to be scared of round numbers. And even though 4% on a historic basis is still a very, very, very tight economy from a labor standpoint, I think that there's something to that. And I think that will be taken differently if you get another uptick of a tenth that gets you to that 4% number.
Yeah, it's funny. I've always been telling people, I think 4.2 is the whites of the eyes of the Fed. I don't think the Fed does anything at 4. I think 4.2, you get to 4.2 by September, they're like, holy shit. I mean, that's also the Psalm rule, right? That's a Psalm rule. It's up, when unemployment's up 0.5% from the low, it's recession time. So yeah, I think 4.2 is where the Fed cuts. I don't think they cut at 4. I think the Fed cuts at 4.2.
What's interesting is that the data has been very noisy, in my opinion. So, you look at economic data, you look at unemployment data, you look at retail sales, you look at inflation, you look at anything. The data is not showing any clear path. And I think that's why we are in this period of what's going to happen. I think when people have this, great take and staunch line as to this is where things are going, it's like, no. You got to be nimble right now. You've got to be able to move and adjust to where the data comes in because, any little change in direction, right? Rate of change is super important. What the market's trying to gather right now is whether we have a consistent direction in some of these numbers. So if unemployment ticks up, okay, the rate of change has changed from unemployment going down to it now going positive. Is that something that's going to sustain higher? And that's where the market will start to say, uh-oh.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting to watch. This week's a big week, unlike, and we get both inflation readings, retail sales. We have 11 Fed speeches. It's just going to be a wild week to watch. And of course, as we talked about in video number 1, we got Roaring Kitty back. sending GameStop up, I don't know, 80%. Just wild time, man. It's crazy.
I love it and hate it at the same time. I love it because it just creates this amazing drama, but at the same time, it's like, come on with this, guy leaning on a chair is putting a stock up 80%. But you know what? Whatever. Like, know the market that you're playing with right now. And it's a different market post-COVID. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of shorts that got taken out today on GameStop, I'm guessing.
And what's interesting too, so now granted, this is a smaller stock, but you have to think about like, okay, how much of this same thing is playing out with an Nvidia, with a Advanced Micro, with some of these semiconductors that have rallied as much as they have. Like, yes, they can't, a retail dumb money, and I'm not calling it that. That's you get
That's
what
the
I'm
movie
saying.
name.
That's the movie. That's the movie name. That's not my words.
Yeah.
And they do a great job of disparaging that that thought process in that movie too.
They do.
But how much of that retail money that can be influenced relatively easily is running these other stocks like they have for the past year or so.
Yeah, again, if history is any sign of what's coming, GameStop will be the first, and there will be others that kind of trail in its wake. And it's also probably true that last people in are going to lose a lot. Just like the chairs get removed, and if you don't take the profit early, you can get hurt.
Yeah, we gave some good comments on that in the prior video as to how you play stuff like that.
There you go. Well, at the end of the day, I do think the Fed is pivoted. I think most people missed it. I think the orientation of the Fed president is important, and he's telling us he's watching two things now, not one. Taylor, where can people find you?
Yeah, find us at Life Goal Investments on both TikTok and on Instagram.
Thank you, buddy.